Welcome to Daily Success. Listen in on these personal conversations with today's leaders, innovators, and influencers as they discuss daily success principles, systems, and solutions. Get ready for Daily Success. Now, here's your host.
Hi, this is Tammy Patzer, and I'm excited today to introduce Shirley Holmlund. Shirley Holmlund is a gifted and spiritual healer validated through science who harnesses life force energy from nature and transmits it to people to enhance their health and well-being, as well as non-living materials such as nutraceuticals for improved performance. Shirley's energy healing abilities have been validated in preclinical scientific research using both cell-based and mouse models to suggest better bone health, increased overall health, and enhanced quality of life. Today, Shirley and I are going to be discussing the word presence, meaning being present. Welcome, Shirley.
Thank you, Tammy. Good afternoon. I am very, thank you for that wonderful introduction. My talk today is on presence. And what is presence? What does presence mean to us? It's really an inner spaciousness. It's being alert in stillness and to be open to what is in the moment. I mean, it's living in the moment and not always bringing in the past and always thinking of the future. My guru, Mr. Trivedi, has given us a chart about presence and how important it is for our success in life. He says that 80% of the people who live in the present, successful people live in the present, and they spend 10% of their time thinking of the past, 10% of their time thinking of the future. People who are less successful, they turn it around and they are 20% live 20% in the present and live the other 40% in the past and 40% in the future. So it is a very important part of us, and it is something that we come to develop. It isn't something that just we pull out of the air one day. It takes time and it takes practice.
So when you talk about being in the present, and that is very interesting because, I mean, I have to raise my hand and say that I have been guilty at times of let's say, dwelling on the past. And it does create a lot of problems in the now. And obviously, if you're living in the future, you're creating a lot of problems because that creates the fear of the future because obviously you're not there yet, so you don't know. But the dwelling in the past, what it did to me is it made it so that I couldn't forgive people for the things that they had done or said or, an act, and even the other day I was driving along and I saw a sign that said VPK enrollment starting soon. Well, VPK was something about kindergarten, okay? And I had a reaction to this guilt because back in the day when my sons, who are now 27 and 29, I could not afford whatever it was to put them into kindergarten because for whatever reason, the funding had not gone through for that year for the free kindergarten. And so I had this, 20 some years later, I was feeling guilty about being poor back 20 some years ago and not being able to provide. So, and I thought to myself, what good does it do me to think about what I couldn't do 25 years ago, related to a monetary situation? So when you talk about being in the present or in the now, what are some of the benefits for that?
The benefits are multifold, because when we are bringing up the past and thinking always of the future, we are really not being totally present in what we are doing. So we're only partially present, and so therefore we are not totally aware, and we don't capture that moment in the place that it's supposed to be. What happens is our mind and our body is 1% of who we really are, and our spirit is 99% of who we are. So when I am not totally in the present, my spirit, the 99% of me, is not leading like it should. Only the 1% is leading. And being the CEO of who I am, of my totality, that is not the best way for me to live my life and to merge with life. I am merging and bringing up the past, which is really not present. We cannot live in the past, and we can't be in the present, and we can only live right here, right now, and we should be present with all our being. Like if we're going to have tea or we're making tea, we should be present with that action and just make tea, not think of 16 other things that we could be doing at the same time. If we are eating our meal, we're often, I even go into restaurants and see people on their phone, having their phone right beside their plate. It's so important. So we're really not being present in what we're doing, and it does take its toll on our health, because we know that our digestive systems do need this nutrition. They do need our awareness, and that awareness within our bodies helps us in every situation that we come across.
You said something that really was interesting. You said that we're 99% spirit and only 1%, I guess, of the body, mind, brain. Can you talk a little bit more about that? Because if we're allowing our ego part of us to guide us, then we're literally holding back the real us, our spirit. What does that do to us? You talked about being mindful, just like in eating or in making a cup of tea, but obviously this affects us on a much deeper level if we're ignoring that nurturing or nourishment of the soul, which is 99% of us. What is some of your ideas about that?
Yes, that's a very interesting comment, because the mind and the body, they can make up all kinds of stories, and they can see things, or our imaginations can run wild with our minds and our bodies, and sometimes we interpret things wrong, and so we get wrong perceptions and so on. But the truth of the matter is that 99% all of our truth is in our spirit. Knows the truth, and so if we are not tuning into our spirit in our everyday and every moment, we are really, as you said, living partly at least from the ego. It might come and it might go, because it's very hard to live 99% in the spirit in our world the way it is, but we try. But if I'm living 99% in the spirit, or living highly in the spirit, I'm going to get the truth of a situation. I'm not going to get my interpretation. I probably won't jump back 20 years and think of that past situation, and I will try to let it go and be more forgiving, because the truth really is in the spirit. The spirit tells the truth. And another thing is people say, well, how do I access that spirit? And of course, I guess that's what our journey to awareness and to beingness, being in spirit, being in, I call being, be in God. That is our journey on this planet, and this is what we work towards in our everyday life. I worked so many years of my life in as a media specialist and teacher in a very large school and in small schools as well. And I realize so often how busy and how many people in a day and how really distractive things could get for myself and for the children. And so I realized that you end up really creating your own ADD or ADHD which means attention deficit disorder or attention deficit hyperactive disorder, just by the way we have to carry on in our jobs and in our everyday living, as well as the way we perceive it to be. It can always be perceived differently, because when we change the way we perceive things, then things begin to change. But I look at the situation there for years and years, and you would go through your day, and at the end of the day, you'd sit down and you would take a look at everything that's happened or whatever you need to do, and you put some of it in your to-do box because you can't get it done every day. And you actually, in time, you really do need that break. If you don't have a break from it, it really can affect you in a very deep way. And I know some of my colleagues at the end of a session or when they were on vacation, they would take their watches off because they didn't want they wanted to have that time of freedom to feel more free. Because that is one thing I really realized that affected me a lot, was the time. We were so driven by time. Every minute, every hour of every day, you could never be 1 minute late. You had children, you had students waiting for you. You were totally responsible for that situation in that class. And 1 minute late could it could be disaster for a situation with certain students. So you really had to always be there. So that really, after looking back on that now, Tammy, I realize I lived that way for 20 years. I gave my brain a rest, and I kind of got away from it. But I know that I did have ADD, and some of that still comes back. But I thank Mr. Trivedi and all of his teachings and all of the transmissions and everything I've received from him, that is really starting to go very far into the background now, and I can be so fully in the present. When I was really fully in the present before was when it was when there was something that had to be dealt with immediately, like a child who perhaps had a diabetic attack or a child who was hurt. I could go into that state of being completely oblivious to everything, but that had to be the safety for the other students and for that student. It was, I know what it was, but to really hang on to it is really quite difficult, I find. And I would find myself going back to the past and going to the future. In later years, I had some extremely unusual experiences, and it would take me back there. But I'm now just as you just kind of forget it, you let it go. You live in the present, and when you live in the present, everything starts to change. You get this depth. There's this energy within you that kind of goes through you. I remember Master Ellis talking one day about the electrical light bulb, that, you have a very low light bulb in your home, and you can't see very well, and there's not much energy going through it or much electricity. But when you put a 1,000-watt light bulb in there, you get that light and you get that energy, and it's like what runs through your body when you're living in the present moment, and you kind of merge with life. You merge with a situation. Things begin to flow. And we actually our spirits come in and they start to speak to us. they start to, and it's different for everybody. We might call it our higher self. We might call it intuition. I call it the grace of God, nature, life force. But that true spirit begins to speak to you. And I've had in situations like it. One that I remember so well was about 3 years ago. And I have it often, but yet sometimes the spirit is very quiet too. But I had this lady that I met, a very regal lady. She was in her 80s, and she became a friend, and we talked on the phone a lot. And then she had cancer, breast cancer, about 18 years before that. And anyway, there was this indication that it might be coming back. So she asked if I would give her some transmissions for the best outcome, right? So I was giving her these transmissions, and then she called me because they had done a biopsy, and she had about 5 biopsies in one breast. It was very painful. She was very upset and so on. And I just said to her, let's just stay present. Let's just hope for the best outcome. That's all we can do. So I just continued to give her these blessings for another 3 weeks. And I got up in the morning, and this always happens if you're wanting spirit to speak to you. Sometimes spirit won't ever answer your question, but it just happens to come when spirit thinks it's whatever this intuition is. When it decides to come, I know it, and I can take those words to the bank. I know that because it's just a special knowingness inside, or it almost speaks to me in words. Anyway, I was just going to the coffee pot in the morning, and they said this lady's name and said, she's going to get a call from the doctor today, and she does not have cancer. That's what it said to me. I was just so shocked, and I said, oh, thank you. That's all I said. I never said anything throughout the day. I knew she'd call me. And at 5 o'clock at night, she's on the phone, and she's just yelling in my ear because the doctor wasn't supposed to even see her for 3 weeks, but they too were so happy she did not have cancer. And so she was phoning me and just informing me about it. So anyway, she did give me a nice testimonial about that experience that she had. But I'll always remember that. That was just one of the best examples of spirit speaking to you and not asking for anything. I didn't expect an outcome. I was just in that state of hope.
That's really a beautiful explanation and example of when you are connected and living in the now, and when your spirit is connected to God, or the God of your understanding, or your higher power, and that energy is coming through. For people who are listening who may have not heard us have a conversation before, could you tell us a little bit more about the energy and the Trivedi effect energy, and what that is and what it means, and how it helps with living in the now?
Yes. The Trivedi effect is really the life force. We can call it divine grace. We can call it nature. We can call it the God of your understanding. But it is that formless, energetic presence that is in all things and in everything. And we cannot be without it. Like some people say, well, I don't believe in God. You don't have to believe in God, but there is a life force energy that's running through you, or else you wouldn't be here. You wouldn't be alive. You wouldn't be able to be speaking to us. It is that life force. And Mr. Trivedi was gifted with this ability to transmit, to connect us. What he does is he's really a conduit. He's not the person giving the energy or doing the energy, but he is connecting us with the God of our understanding, whatever that is. As I said, it could be nature, it could be a religious entity, the gift of divine grace, whatever you want to call it. But he is connecting us, the person or the object, or whatever it is, or whether it's a plant or an animal, that is, they're connecting that with with their source, the God of their understanding, or whatever it is that wherever they came from. We are born. We are born, and we are born from source, and we go on our way back to source. And that's what he connects us to in a very strong way. It's like the computer, like we are the computer, and he is connecting us to the satellite. And he's connecting us in such a way that, yes, I do, because of Mr. Trivedi, I am feeling that presence within me so much deeper right now than I have ever in my life. And I've realized that I can keep it there always if I tune in once in a while. What are my thoughts? And when I'm making tea, am I thinking of the tea, or am I thinking about something that happened 20 years ago or 10 years ago, or am I thinking about what I have to do tomorrow? I need to bring myself always back to the present moment. What am I doing now, so that my awareness is very deep and very strong? And that way it will change the trajectory of your life, because you can become more decisive. How many times am I in sort of rushing around, and I'm not really in my total presence, and I'm asking, a question, or I'm trying to make a decision and I can't really decide. But if I'm speaking right totally in my presence, that means that spirit is there as well, and is merging with who I am, and can give me a decisive answer, instead of me going around the mulberry bush 13 times and saying, I'm not sure what to do here, I'm not sure what to do here and here. But if you are in the present moment, and you are connected to that source, to that truth, to the spirit that is really within you, it's for us, it's an inside job. It really does change our life. I am really working on that right now, and that is why I'm just delighted to be able to speak to you about it today, Tammy.
I think that's interesting. You said it's an inside job, and I think that that is a very good way to describe it, because so often people do look outside of themselves, thinking that some other person, or that some modality, or that some dogma or something is going to magically rescue them. But the truth is that we have it within us, and that all we have to do is connect. And this energy that you've described, known as the Trivedi effect, is, like you said, that connection. And you have also worked on becoming a conduit for this energy, and you help people connect, like in the story that you were telling me about the woman. And of course, the energy is an intelligent energy, because it is of the natural or life force, divine source. And so it's intelligent, and it works on different people in different ways. But I think it is very interesting when you talk about being present and being in the now, because when you are operating now, you are, like you said, very focused on what is right now. Like when you're talking about if you were working with children and you had to, if they needed something, you were right there focused on them. And it is interesting what you were talking about when you were talking about that time, and how when you were in the teaching profession as a media specialist, that time, you had to be there if that class bell rang at 3:00, you had to be there. So there wasn't any room for, any leeway in that, because, you'd have all these children coming in and they needed, supervision or whatever was happening at that time. And isn't that interesting how they used to say ability to multitask? And I used to pride myself on what I thought was this ability to multitask, because I did have a lot of things I was juggling. But the stress of multitasking is so much that it does really play havoc with your health, and both physically and mentally. People develop ulcers, people develop stress-related ailments because of the fact that they're trying to juggle so much. And that time element, I had a job once that I actually quit because they were so rigid in the time for our breaks. We were supposed to take our break at 10 to 10:15 or 10:15 to 10:30. Well, I was in customer service. People don't look at the clock and say, oh, I can't call because it's 10 o'clock and Tammy has to go on her break. Because, so if I had somebody on the call at 10 o'clock and I was not done helping them, I couldn't say, oh, sorry, if I don't leave now, I'll miss my break because of the rigidity of the company. So how often did I miss my 15-minute break because I was helping someone, because that was my job, and the company was too rigid to realize that was a stupid rule, to make somebody conform in these little 15-minute increments because that's what they wanted, to have it so regimented. But in terms of being in the present and the now, you've talked about how that is different than being in that multitasking or that ADD or ADHD, because a lot of adults, they talk about it with children a lot, but a lot of adults seem to suffer from that. And I think you're right. It's not so much, it's almost like it's beat into you or trained into you in the workplace, that you have to do all of these things in this block of time, between 8 a.m. and 5 p.m. or whatever that schedule is, that artificial schedule that they put you in. So before I let you go, I wanted to ask you, is there anything else that you wanted to talk about related to being in the now, being in the present?
Tammy, I thought your latest explanation about that multitasking was so well put, because that is exactly what it was. And multitasking, you're right, we prided ourselves on the ability to do it. But I do really personally in my heart feel that it does lead to brain drain, and with the presence that we can bring to everything, it kind of helps that. And I know the job and the workforce, I hope it's in time, they will see the human part of people, and that they make better time for people to be able to do what needs to be done. And so thank you for that. That was very well put. What I think that for me, the stillness, I think one of the important things is to really be able to have that little bit of space, a little, if we do nothing but just use our breath and take a few breaths before we speak, it brings that spirit that it merges into our bodies in a stronger way. And so we, and by working on the silence, trying to have that, even the small spacious space and silence and stillness in our everyday life, if we can work it in, to walk in nature and just enjoy the moment and not grab onto things, not judge them, just be with certain situations, or be with the situation, and keep that presence about us. We can cut the mind chatter if we really want to, and if we keep working at it, we can cut that mind chatter and the mental restlessness and all those unnecessary distractions, and we can really truly live in the present, and we will find ourselves almost merging with the experience that we are having, and it brings an aliveness to every your inner body, or every cell of your body. It just brings that aliveness to it, and there's just a different. I do feel a different presence when I am totally in that space.
That's beautiful. So everyone, if you want to connect with Shirley, you can go to her website at shirleyholmlund.com, and that's SHIRLEY Holmlund, HOLMLUND. You can find out more about Shirley's background. You can find out more about the science that Shirley's validated in, and about different programs. Of course, there's testimonials and more information there. And again, that's shirleyholmlund.com. I really want to thank you, Shirley, for joining me today and talking about presence, the act of being present.
Well, thank you, Tammy, for this opportunity to speak with you today, and to reach out to others. And it's been a delight to be on this radio interview with you this afternoon. Thank you.
Thank you so much, everyone. This is Tammy Patzer. Go make it a beautiful day. This information is not intended to provide diagnosis, treatment, or medical advice. Products, services, information, and other content provided in this broadcast, including information that may be provided in this broadcast directly or by linking to third-party websites, are provided for informational purposes only. Please consult with a physician or other healthcare professional regarding any medical or health-related diagnosis or treatment options.
You've been listening to Daily Success. Tune in again and subscribe. Never miss a moment of daily success.